Hello, fellow travelers and fellow roguers. This is a companion piece to the last video that I just posted called What We Can Learn from the Ancients Now, or What the Ancients Can Teach Us Now, because there was a fourth part that I wanted to add to it, and that is the wrinkle that Christ adds to the idea of justice at all. To briefly review the last video, and I encourage you to go look at it, we talked about Hammurabi's code, and how Hammurabi, even though his code seems brutal to us today, actually offers a limit to punishment. And also Aeschylus's The Oresteia, which came some 1,200 years after Hammurabi, and seems to be a dramatic enactment of the Greek idea of the invention of the trial by jury. Both of these works, or both of these events, Hammurabi's historical event as a king, a brilliant king, and Aeschylus's play, offer us three innovations that help the world move from tribalism and barbarism to a civilizational model for justice and for order. And the three innovations that are introduced or at least displayed are, one, the concept that you are innocent until proven guilty, and the trial itself. Secondly, both of them introduce the idea that there is a limit to punishment, which is actually what makes punishment humane, that there's an end to it. With the old ancient tribal idea of the blood feud revenge, there was never any end to the punishment that could be exacted for slights that were perpetuated by one tribe or one family or one person against another. And so an eye for an eye actually limits it to an eye, which is better than the model that came before it. And the third thing that was introduced, obliquely, in a sense, is the social contract. In the Oresteia, Athena actually tells the Furies, the goddesses who are offended by the death of Clytemnestra by her son Orestes, and Orestes himself, who only killed his mother because he was ordered to by a god and by Greek custom, that they must abide by the results of this trial by jury, and they agreed to do that. So that's the inception of the social contract, which will be taken up and embraced during the Age of Enlightenment in the West far later on. But what I want to add to that is another concept regarding justice that was introduced by Christ and is much quoted. And I'm not here to say that it's quoted or misquoted, but I think that there's another side to it that a lot of people aren't aware. And that's the concept of turning the other cheek. I think most people in the late 20th century and the early 21st century, especially Christians, have embraced the idea of turning the other cheek as the idea that when we are unjustly treated, that instead of retaliating, we should turn the other cheek, we should take the high road, and we should not retaliate in kind. But what we miss in that interpretation, which I don't think is incorrect, I just think it's incomplete, is that during Christ's time, there was slapping itself was ritualized. So I want to explain a little bit about that. During Christ's time, first of all, no one slapped anyone with the left hand. All slapping was done with the right hand. If you were to slap an equal, you would slap an equal with the right hand backhandedly. To slap somebody backhandedly was to challenge them publicly to a duel, as it were. In fact, it got ritualized later with the touching on the cheek of a glove to indicate, I am challenging you, and we will settle this in the field of battle. If you were to slap an inferior, who would be a slave in society, a child, an other, somebody from another tribe, you also slapped with the right hand, but you slapped with the palm. So to slap somebody with a palm was to indicate your superiority and their inferiority. So let's think about this. If Christ is telling his followers, who are much maligned in the society in which they exist, to turn the other cheek when they are slapped, the assumption is that when they were slapped the first time, they were slapped with the back of the hand because they are inferior to whoever slapped them. By turning the other cheek, which means they're always slapped on the left cheek and they're always slapped with the back of the hand, to turn the other cheek is to challenge the person who slapped them to slap them again. But if that person is to slap them again on the right cheek, they're not going to slap them with the palm because nobody slaps this way. They're going to have to slap them with the back of the hand on the other cheek. And so the admonishment to turn the other cheek is also an admonishment for the followers of Christ to stand up and say, if you are going to slap me again, you're going to have to recognize me as your equal. This, I would suggest to you, is exactly what the peaceful demonstrators are doing in the wake of the death of George Floyd right now. They are standing up to their perceived oppressors who have treated them as inferiors their whole lives and said, if you are going to slap me again, you're going to have to recognize me as your equal to do so. And I think they should be lauded for this. And I think that that is why peaceful protest and free speech is in the Constitution in the first place. The right to those things is in the Constitution in the first place. Nobody deserves to be maligned for who they are or how they choose to live, so long as the way they choose to live does not step on anybody else's toes in the way that they choose to live. So I think that the peaceful protesters that are out there ought to be applauded. They ought to be supported. They ought to be encouraged because they are standing up like Christ told them to and saying, if you slap me again, you have to do so as an act publicly that recognizes me as your equal. Now, this does not apply to those who are taking advantage of this current situation in order to loot or burn or steal or recklessly ruin private property and then say that it's somehow connected to George Floyd. I'm not sure whether most of these people even care about George Floyd, but they do seem to be taking advantage of a situation that has presented itself that might be advantageous to them. So the wrinkle that Christ offers us in this sort of movement that we've gone from barbarism through tribalism to a civilizational model for justice is that our right to peaceful assembly, to protest, and to free speech is that standing up to those that we perceive are oppressing us and saying to them, if you continue to oppress me, I'm going to demand that you do it to me as an equal and not as if you think I am an inferior. So let's keep that in mind. Let's support the people who are doing this peacefully, and let's encourage them to resist the urge to violence and to a slide back into barbarism, because as the ancient world has also told us and taught us, that barbarism never produces the fruit that we wish that it would. So again, I encourage you to bear that in mind as we face the tensions, the anxieties, and the general unrest that we're seeing right now. And I want to encourage you again, stay sane, stay healthy, and folks, be kind to each other. Thank you.